It's Lucy Litch, and this is Tiny House Conversations. It's the Australian-based podcast where I interview experienced tiny houses, tiny builders, and adventurers in the tiny world so you can discover how to create, build, and transition into tiny life. Before we get into the show, I want to let you know about something I feel will be a game changer for aspiring tiny houses and the tiny community as a whole. It's a 3D tiny house designer that my friends at Tiny Easy have recently released. And since you're listening to this podcast to learn more about tiny living, you've probably been envisioning and dreaming about what your own tiny house could look like. Well, Tiny Easy's 3D Tiny House Designer is the first online design tool that lets you design your tiny house without needing any technical or design knowledge. I know for someone like me whose creative strengths are definitely not in design, that this is a time and frustration saver. I love that in the designer, I can just drag and drop building blocks to design my tiny house in minutes and then share the design with my friends and tiny house builders. How cool is that? But what's the alternative? Well, I'd literally be sitting here for weeks or maybe even months trying to learn a difficult professional drafting program, or I'd have to hire an expensive architect. All the technical stuff kind of hurts my brain. Can you relate? And I'd rather the money go towards some must-have features in my tiny house. The best thing about the designer is that you can try it out for free and start mocking up your tiny house today. Just choose one of their beautiful tiny house design templates or start from scratch and let your creativity and imagination run free. Now, if you like the 3D Tiny House Designer, the Tiny Easy team are giving you a super generous 75% off the first month of the premium version, and that includes a ton of more awesome objects, furniture, decorations, materials, and so much more to make your tiny house super special. So just head over to tinyhouseconversations.com/tinyeasydesigner and use the code Lucy75 to get started. I'll also put a link in the show notes with all the details for you for easy access. And if you haven't heard my tiny house conversation with the Tiny Easy team, make sure you go check out episode number 22 with Till, Lauren, and Eugene. They're doing some amazing things over in New Zealand to help make your tiny house journey easier, and this 3D designer is just the start. Now, let's intro today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of Tiny House Conversations. Today I'm speaking with Grant Emans, who is the founder of Designer Eco Tiny Homes, based in Ulladulla on the south coast of New South Wales. If you've been following along for a little while and listening to the show, you'll know that Designer Eco are building my own tiny home. And this episode has been a long time coming. I've been wanting to speak to Grant even before I started the podcast. And in this conversation, we talk about Grant's story and background in the construction industry and how he came to specialise in tiny house builds, the shifts that Grant has seen in the tiny house world from when he started building tiny homes and what's currently present in the industry today. For DIY tiny house builders, we talked about some options that Designer Eco offers, including trailers and shells to lock up. We also talked all about solar trailers and the benefits compared to putting solar panels on your tiny house roof, the tiny house models Designer Eco build and the process to work with them, and so much more. Now, you'll really get to feel and hear Grant's passion for tiny homes in this episode, and you'll also get a deeper understanding and insight into the mission behind Designer Eco. It's not just about building houses for people. It's so much more than that. And I've been teasing this for a little while. Make sure you keep an eye out for upcoming episodes where I start to share more details about my own tiny house journey, including why I decided to go with Designer Eco Tiny Homes, some different stories that have happened around my tiny house parking space and how I came to figure all of that out, and plenty more. So, on to this tiny house conversation with Grant. Grant, welcome to Tiny House Conversations, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Lucy. Thanks for having me on board.
Yeah. So, Grant, you're the owner of the tiny house building company Designer Eco Tiny Homes, based in Ulladulla on the south coast of New South Wales. And I first came across you guys, I believe it was maybe either 2019 or 2020. I feel like it's a bit of a blur at this stage, but there was a tiny homes festival in St. Ives in Sydney. And I remember that the tiny home that you had on display there was one of your 7.2 lifestyle series. And I thought it was absolutely stunning. And for me, it stood out above the rest. And fast forward to today, in August 2022, and my own tiny house is being built by you guys as we speak, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
But with all that being said, I know a lot of people listening would love to know more about Designer Eco Tiny Homes. But first, can you start by sharing with us just a bit about your background and how you came to specialise in tiny house builds?
Oh, that's a great question. What an interesting time in history, because if you went to the St. Ives, I think that would have been maybe a week or two, was it, before everything got shut down, maybe?
Yeah.
I think that was the last show we've done. We haven't been to a show since because just the difficulties of that type of thing. A lot of it got cancelled and all sorts of dramas. In the end, we made our own, we have our own showroom now, so we have a permanent show every day of the year. So it's we thought, well, we won't have to worry about going to shows anymore. We have our own show every day. So started the showroom this year, which is a good development for us, of course, as a business, but I think for the whole movement to have a permanent display of tiny homes, we normally have maybe 10 to 12 on display at any one time. So we do love showing them like that. But back there, St. Ives, what a great show it was. We had a really special tiny house there. It was a 7.2. And, when I think back to the beginning, which is back to your original question, how did I get into it? I was in home building. I was at university. I studied property economics. I always had an interest in it. And my brother and I started a building company together, building just regular houses. We did that. We started that in back in 2000. So it's been a while now, 22 years ago. We were always interested in new things and always looking at new ways of doing things. And it wasn't until sort of maybe 2012, something like that, 2010, 2012, when we moved into more sustainable home building. We offered packages of minimum 5-star energy rated homes. So we thought that's more the future than just standard homes that people were building. But even in that, we found just home building was lacking. Like what we were doing and what we still do in a lot of cases was just not sustainable. So we looked at different things, shipping container homes, all those sort of things. In the end, about 2015, we finished building homes, and my brother moved on to a different pursuit. But I felt that I had a lot more to give in the building industry, and I feel like a little bit, for me personally, I felt like I have a faith in God. I believe in God, and I felt that He was directing me, and something came across my desk, which spoke about these caravans. You could have a caravan in New South Wales in your house, in your backyard, without the need for any development or council approval. And I thought, what an interesting piece of legislation. I didn't know it existed. And around the same time, there was a TV show on, American show it was, this tiny house show. I can't remember, it might have been Tiny House Nation or something. And I thought, oh wow, look at that. That's like a caravan that's been designed to look like a house. It would fit in this category then of not requiring any council approval, which was a benefit. And what an amazing use of natural resources to house somebody. I thought, that's such a better method, because for so long I felt so many people were overcapitalizing on their builds because they felt that's what the market wanted. Now, that's okay. I understand that as a financial decision. So I wouldn't take anyone away from that. But as far as an environmental decision, oh man, we were just making homes that were just too big, just far too big. So when I saw this show, I thought, that's fantastic, and I got to making my first tiny house. It was 3.6 meters long, by 2.4. It was just a room. There was no kitchen or bathroom. It was just to see the shape and how it went together. And I sold that straight away. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's cool. And then I saw that there was a conference going on, the inaugural tiny house sort of conference in North Carolina in America. So I flew over for the weekend. I think I was in the air longer than I was on the ground. So I just flew over. It's a long way over the other side of America. Anyway, and I saw this conference, and there was about 500 people went to it. A lot of DIYs, but there was a few builders there trying to see if it was something they wanted to pursue as well. And I remember there's about 5 or 6 different tiny houses there, and I thought, oh, this is fantastic. They were far more progressed than us, the Americans. So yeah, they had essentially a house on wheels, kitchen, bathroom, living, bedrooms, and I just thought this is fantastic. So I flew home. On the plane, I had a sketch pad and I was up the whole time, and I sketched out the first display model that I was going to build. And I had an old friend who was a carpenter. I said, "Hey, do you want to join me? I'm going to try this new venture." When I came back, I said, I remember he was up on a roof, and I yelled out, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm sick of this. Let's have a go." And I said, "Okay." So together we made this first tiny house display model, which was a 6-meter one at the time, and it had a little back porch. And we finished it off, and we drove it off to Canberra Caravan Show. And people were lining up, looking at it. What's this? This is interesting. This is new. And then we went off. The week later, we went off to Sydney Home Show. I think 2016 by that stage. Yeah, about 2016. I started the company in July 2016. So yeah, it was probably October, November 2016. We went off to 2 shows, and we had a queue probably 100 meters long. Look out! Everyone was at the show saying, "What is this?" Just hundreds and hundreds of people went through it, and I thought, yeah, I think there's a real need. I think people are really interested in it, and from there we started getting some jobs. And today we have 2 factories, a showroom, and about 40 employees full time. So we're on track this year to make about 100 tiny houses in the calendar year. That's where it started, I guess. We just started with a little one in my backyard. I remember my wife saying, "You can't build those here, it's too noisy." So off I went and got a factory in town. It was more a shed in town, and then we're in a factory now. But yeah, it's just grown. It's just grown every year. I don't know personally, I think that in the future, I don't know how long that will be either. I think that up to 15% of the population will be living in either a tiny house or tiny home, of some description. It doesn't have to be on wheels. It might have been a small one, a smaller house on the ground. But yeah, I think that the market is moving towards a significant portion, 15% will be using this type of house in the future. Yeah, so that's where we're headed.
Oh, I love that. Like, so many great things that you said there, and what an interesting story. And it really has been great to see the evolution of designer eco tiny homes from, you were talking about that, you were thinking about this back in 2012, and then you didn't start your company until 2016. So you had this like 4-year period of, I guess, like you're talking about going over to the States and getting higher guidance, I guess, as well, of like what's your path and what's next for you. And I think that's, I just love that, because I feel like it feels very organic the way that it's happened. And, I feel like Designer Eco is maybe one of the original tiny house building companies, if I'm not mistaken, here in Australia at least. And so you've been on the scene for a little while, and I'm curious, since you started out building tiny homes back in 2016, and then if you fast forward to today, what changes have you seen in the tiny house world when it comes to designs, builds, maybe even different trends within the space, or even other factors that have shifted over time in this space?
That's a good question. It's very much, it's still an early days industry. We're still very young, I would say. I know for me, this is our 6th year, or whatever it is. 6 years, time goes fast, but it's still very, very young as far as an industry goes, but the changes I've seen have been quite dramatic. I would say the original tiny house builder in Australia would be either there was a company in Queensland, and I just can't remember their name. I'm sorry, but they stopped making them now, so I can't remember their name. But they made this absolutely beautiful, architecturally designed. There was two architects, and it was a beautiful build. It was very expensive though, and I think that was the issue. They missed the. It was a beautiful structure they made. I think the core need. The great thing about a tiny house is that it solves many problems in one. So I believe it's a fantastic financial solution for a lot of people, and it's also an environmentally sustainable one. So you've got both physical, environmental, and mental capacity there is addressed in the one house. So for a lot of people, the mortgage stress on a big house, you don't get that with a tiny house. So that's a huge part of their life you're not worrying about. And you're also using, again, like I said, the most appropriate use of natural resources to house somebody. So those two things go a long way. So, but if your price point on the house is too high, it's not really a viable thing for people. So I think that's possibly where that company may not have quite got it right. And the other company was an individual down in Melbourne. Fred, you would have probably spoken maybe with Fred. I think he possibly made the first commercial one. Mm-hmm. I know he sells the now still trailers and is an advocate for the industry, and it's a wonderful thing. And wish him all the best for his business. I think the difference for me was that I had such long time in the building game, building normal houses. I had the experience of being able to produce an actual structure, knowing what was good and what was strong and what was going to work, but also I had my finger on the pulse as to obviously because my background is in economics as well. It's like the price point is critical for people. If you're just buying something that's going to stress you out even more, there's no solution there. And so I think the important thing about any solution for the environment and society, it has to meet all the categories. And I think a tiny house does that. It's an affordable structure. It's good for your mental health because you know that you're not leveraged through the roof, like a normal house would be. Most people can afford to get a tiny house. It's much more in reach. And like I said, within yourself that you're doing a great thing for the environment and the future. So as far as seeing the development of that, like for us, we target those two main factors. You've got to watch the price and you've got to produce a really high quality product at the same time. So for us, when I look at the changes in the industry, for us, we're just pursuing those two main goals, keeping a lid on the price and making sure that we're making these smaller homes. People originally were looking to use them for permanent dwellings, and there was a big push for families to live in them. As the time gone on, I think that ideal for the family is really on the back burner. People don't sort of make those comments anymore that they used to. Oh, I couldn't live there with my 5 kids or 4 kids. And I'm like, well, I agree. I wouldn't either, And there was a recent article, and I think it might have been you, but I think the Barefoot Investor made the comment, oh, yeah, it's only for a short time. I tried doing a tiny thing, living in a Winnebago with my 4 kids. For 4 months, I think he said he lasted. And I thought, hats off to him for lasting 4 months in a tiny house with 4 kids. I don't make him for that. So whereas in the past, I might have tried to meet that part of the market and create a solution for them, I don't bother anymore because I'm more focused on what it's really for. And that's either, individuals or couples, or maybe we do sell the odd one to maybe 1 kid. That's probably the max I would suggest. So there's definitely been a shift in definitely our thinking towards who we sell tiny houses for. And there's also a huge increase from when I first started in holidays and the commercial side of the tiny house, creating some tiny house holiday accommodation. And I think that is a significant part of the industry that the tiny house is really useful for. So that'd be my main shift. I think that in the beginning, I thought we could create a tiny house for everybody, whereas now we don't bother. We more target practically what they're for, and that's either for like 1, 2, or 3 people, or we target holiday accommodation, because I think they're a wonderful opportunity for people to do that and to be able to get people out of the city and create a nice space for themselves to relax. And it's like glamping to the max. So yeah, I'd say they're my biggest changes that I've seen.
Yeah, and I would think as well, like with the rise in the short-term rental market and Airbnbs and other holiday type places, that it is also a good opportunity if there are people that are wanting or potentially thinking about wanting to live longer term, that they can go and actually stay in a tiny home now for a weekend or a week or something, just to get a taste for it. And also just, again, with the current climate of everything that's been going on in the last couple of years, and then people maybe looking to like leave their jobs or just change their lifestyle in a way, that also the Airbnb thing, I guess, can be another form of income to then maybe take the pressure of having to go to, say, like a 9-to-5 job or something like that. So it's really interesting to see and the different types of uses. And then I know that there's also this multi-generational thing too, where people have a piece of land and maybe the family's got a main dwelling on the land, and then they want to put a tiny home on there and then maybe have their parents come and live on there. And then it's like bringing families together on the same piece of land too, which is like a really nice thing to see as well.
Oh, maximising the use of land. The tiny house can do that perfectly. You're spot on with the fact that you've got income diversification for some people, so they're getting a different source of income, so they can reduce sort of hours on what they may have previously been doing if they're that way inclined. They like to host or be that sort of person to run an Airbnb. And there's also the fact that, yeah, exactly, if you've got family interstate, you need a place for them to stay, and you want, but there's that sense of young families not necessarily have the room in the main house, can't afford an enormous extension, and also like the separation of, say, parents or parents-in-law. Those types of things a tiny house solves really well. They have independent living, very easily done, and even if it's just for a short time, it's transitional. You can move your transportable home, you can move it so you can use it for a time, you can then sell it and move it on. So it's whereas if you were going to do a renovation on a house, you think, oh, right now I need 5 bedrooms. Well, you're sort of stuck with that then, whatever investment you put in, that's in the house then. So economics, people will make comment about that. Is it the best use of finances? Well, of course you have to assess it for yourself at the time. But I think the great thing about the tiny house is it gives you the variety, it gives you options. It gives you options that you possibly wouldn't have had in the past. You certainly wouldn't have had this in the past. You could have done a regular caravan, and people have done that. And if you drive past a house and you see a caravan in the backyard or in the front yard, and you think, oh, that's so ugly, that's so ugly. It's like it's really, the traditional caravan is designed to travel, be aerodynamic and lightweight, and because you don't want to spend the fuel down the highway. But with the tiny house, it's everything you need as far as a caravan goes, because it's transportable, but it's designed to look like a house. So it far more fits in the environment, the residential environment, where it can be used far more effectively. There's so many caravans, and I think there's over 500,000 caravans in New South Wales alone, which just sit idle in somebody's driveway, The tiny house, if it's a tiny house, I think you're a much better option. You can have guests come and stay, and yeah, I just love everything about a tiny house. There's something people say, oh, I can't fit all my stuff in it. And you're like, okay, that's okay. Maybe it's not. Like I said earlier, I don't think that a tiny house is for everybody, but I do think that it will be about 15% of the population can and should fit into a tiny house. I think the way their lifestyle is, that it's perfect for them.
One of the things that you were talking about just then, sort of the tiny houses versus caravans, and that caravans are built to be more lightweight and portable and all of that, and tiny houses are more structurally sound. When I first came across one of your homes at the St. Ives Festival, I remember walking in there going, because I don't think I'd ever really seen a tiny house in person. I'd seen a lot of the videos online and all of that, and yours was maybe one of the first. And I walked in and I was like, wow, like you've got modern, like it's very modern, but you also had a lot of the same types of maybe appliances that you might see in a regular home, but it's just in a smaller space. And I had this feeling of, wow, I could live in here. I actually don't need as much space as I've had for, most of my life in the different places that I've lived in. And I haven't lived in huge houses. It's just been maybe a unit or a small home or something. But that's one thing that I thought stood out with your homes. And I guess a lot of people are doing it now too, but it's just like you can still have a lot of your comforts, but it's just put in a smaller space.
Oh, exactly. Like I said earlier, a tiny house is the most appropriate use of natural resources to house somebody. I mean, you can have a bigger house, sure, and there could be rooms in that house that you might use once a year, if that. You might host a party once a year or once a decade maybe, and think, oh, I'm allowed to add that room. Well, really? I don't think so. And I think that's the key. People need to, at some point, decide for themselves what's more important. And for the environmentally conscious, for those that live in or that sort of demographic, on the household size, you'll see that you think, hang on, why would I spend, and I'm only going to pick on Sydney here. I know, and I'm pretty sure Melbourne's the same, but the medium house price in Sydney, I believe, is over $1 million. So that's the average, right? The medium, whatever. It's not even a good one. It's not even good. I think, oh man, $1 million.
Yeah.
And I think myself, okay, I can spend $1 million and I can be, close to a job, maybe. Probably not even close to a job in Sydney. You probably still got a long commute. And I just think at some point people are going to say, you know what, I don't need that. I actually don't need to work here, or I don't need that job, because I don't need to spend $1 million on a house. I could spend 150,000. I could work a lot less. In fact, for a lot of people, well, not everybody, but for a lot of people, they have $150,000, or they sell an asset and they've got that money and you're debt free. And then you think, oh, what am I going to do with my time? Well, it's not work. I can guarantee you that. It's going to be experiences, travel. You think, oh yeah, who's going to look after my house? Well, just close the door. It's not a big deal,
Yeah.
Oh, I've got to clean the house this weekend. Oh, really? That'll take like 20 minutes. The perception is, and like I said, it comes back to when I was home building. People used to think you had to build 3 bedrooms plus study, double garage. That was the minimum. That's what the real estate agent wanted. That's what he could sell or she could sell. So they felt they had to do it. I said, but hang on, you're a single person. Oh yeah, but it's a good investment. Oh, probably is, but at what point are you going to say, actually, I don't need that, because the environment doesn't need that. And if you look at it now, specifically this year, if you were building a new house this year with the price of materials year on year went up 26%. So if you were thinking about making a big house, the price of that build just went through the roof. And you think, why am I building that extra bedroom again? Why do I need another, whatever it is, $100,000? Do I really need that? And I think that's when financially, because you've got to remember that there's a lot of push. People want us to be environmentally conscious, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But if it doesn't make economic sense, they won't do it. You might get the odd person. Oh, I'll pay extra. I know that's a better environmental choice, and I'll pay extra. You'll get A few rich people do that, right? But if you want society to do that, if you want the whole community to do that, it must make economic sense. It must, or they won't. They just simply won't do it, or they can't do it. It's not a matter of they might want to do it, but if they can't afford it, but at some point there'll be a critical time in history where it won't matter if you can or can't afford it. You're going to have to do it because there's not going to be any left. There's not going to be any left. And if you look at this year, it's a very worrying sign because I'm not saying it's the environment necessarily. There's other factors, but the supply is gone. The ability to get timber, materials, all sorts of things this year has been a constant stress for building companies all over the news about the things that are happening. It's very difficult. So I strongly believe that yes, it has to be environmentally conscious, every decision you make, but it has to be financially viable as well. People just simply won't make it. And the more we can advocate for this as a viable option, and the more government gets on board and allows for this type of development to go in amongst the existing residential developments, then the more people can make this choice freely and readily, and we'll see a reduction in the demand on our environment, and we'll see positive change both in people's physical health, mentally that is, because they won't have to work so much, but also we'll see it in the environment. You'll see a big reduction in what we're doing and impact, and you'll see, and that's what we need to do for future generation. That's why I love tiny houses so much.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it is this real knock-on effect. And it does, as much as we don't want it to always be about finances, the reality is that may be the number one or one of the top things for most people, because we have to pay for cost of living and all of that. And, we're seeing the price, the price rising in a lot of things, as well as the supply shortages. And, I would love to move a little bit into what you guys do at Designer Eco Tiny Homes. And I know like a lot of people DIY build, and there's this kind of way up between doing it DIY versus using a building company like yourself. If someone is a DIY builder, but they want help with having the foundation and the exterior of their tiny home pre-built, but then they want to do the rest of the interior themselves, can you talk a bit more about the options that you guys have? You have a trailer, and then there's a shelter lockup that they can have as well. So those options.
Oh, we love DIYs. People want to have a go themselves. Why not? Like, it should be every human's right to make their own home. No problems, no question about it. However, it's not as easy as you. It's not as easy as you think. So there's a fantastic video. I can't remember its name, but I'm sure it was on Netflix or one of those streaming. And it was like, it showed us the story of three people making and doing a DIY tiny house. And the one thing I noted when I saw it and watched it, that they all had so much energy at the start and were so excited. And they think, oh, this is so fun. It's so easy. It's small. I'll have this done in no time. And months and months and months, and I think for some people it was even over a year later, still working on it, and I think, then it becomes onerous and, very difficult, especially if you're trying to live in it at the same time, dealing with weather. And I remember from that, watching that video, I thought, you know what, the whole DIY thing, it's great, but they need help. And so we offer, yes, we do sell just straight trailers, but we highly recommend people, if you're going to do the DIY, we'll build the tiny house to what we call lockup. So in other words, it's watertight. It's got the shell, it's got all the frame, the structure, the roofing, all the windows are in, and the cladding's on the outside. And when you step inside, it's like a blank canvas. You can do they're not always easy. I wouldn't say they're the easy bits, but you can do it without being impacted by the weather. So if it takes you 6 to 12 months and you go through multiple seasons, it's not an issue for you, because you've done the hard part. You won't get any damage to your frame from weather and things like that. So that's that's my preference for DIYs, that they buy just a shell and they, work on the internal lining and plumbing and electrical roughing and some cabinetry and that sort of fun stuff there. So that's what we offer as an option for people, because we take the hard part out of it and they're just in the finishing stage. So there's a lot of satisfaction in that, turning it from what looks a blank canvas into their finished product. But they haven't had to worry about whether it's going to be strong enough, are the walls going to be straight, or are they going to be structurally braced properly? They don't have to worry about all that sort of stuff that we know as builders from our home building days, that we've done it right and it's strong. It's not going anywhere. So yeah, that's what we offer, a shell, what we call a shell. So you can have a DIY trailer flat, you can have a shell, or you can have the full finished product if you want. It's up to you.
No, it's good to have that option, because and look, as you would know, like there's seems to be so many different layers, and if you're having a home, you really want to have that foundation done properly, so that you don't start having issues down the track, whether it's after the first year or whenever it might be. So I think that's great to have that option. If someone still wants to maybe have a go at some part of the build, but then having the foundation done for them, that's great. And in some other episodes with tiny house builders, we've talked about how people can connect to things like mains, power, water, and sewage. But in this conversation with you, Grant, because I know that you guys have some off-grid solutions, I'd love to focus on that today. So you have solar trailers. That's something I've actually been looking at for myself. And I'm wondering, what are some of the reasons that you guys develop these solar trailers versus installing solar panels on a roof? So, like, what are the benefits?
Oh, man, solar. Wow. So originally we used to build the tinies, and, at the start you think, oh, yeah, we have to meet the needs, right? So a lot of these people had no access to services. So if you're going to sell tinies, you've got to create the solutions for them. Now, there's for the waste, there's products you can buy like composting toilets and things like that. So that's easy. You can get a rainwater tank and connect that to the tiny. So that's easy. Water, sewer, that's sort of covered. Power. Oh man, power. If you don't have mains power, you got to come up with something, right? So there's obviously a generator, but no one wants to listen to that, and no one wants to burn the fuel. So you've got to go some form of either solar or wind. Wind is another option, but we have access to it, but typically it's people prefer the solar. Solar, originally we created some systems where we put them on the roof, and I should have changed the name. They think when you say the word off-grid to somebody, some people felt that meant that they could go off-grid and they would have power. And think, oh, actually, no, sorry. It's you got to park the tiny house in the sun. And you think, oh, that's obvious. Well, no, it's not. It's not obvious to some. So too many times we would build these tiny house, we would build this really fancy built-in solar system, put it on the roof, and you've asked the client, where are you going to park it? Oh, yeah, no, it's fine here, and this is there, and that and that. And you're like, okay, well, let's put the panels on this side because that'll be the north-facing side, and that'll get the most sun. And they get it to site, and they're like, oh, no, it looks better here. Oh, no, that's no good. I'm going to have to swap the panels to the other side. Oh, you're kidding me. Or there's this tree shading most of the sun between, 2 and 10 and 2 o'clock. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, that won't matter. There'll be plenty of sun. No, there's not. You have to have those panels in the sun the whole time. It's just not a viable option. So soon we realized, oh, hang on, this is not working. Putting the solar on the roof, kept getting callbacks saying, oh, I've run out of power. And then I'd say, oh, send me a photo. And now I'm looking at this tiny in the bush and I'm thinking, oh, well, you haven't had sun on the panels since we delivered it, or they took it. So we knew that we had to come up with something else. So there's two main problems with solar systems on a tiny house. The roof isn't big enough to mount enough solar panels to make it effective. You can create a system, but it's it's typically just does the job. It's only just. So you have to support it with an alternate power source. And it needs to be in the sun the whole time. That's the two critical things we learned. There's not enough solar panels for the roof, and we need to guarantee that these clients are putting them in the sun. So we made the call that we would ban built-in solar systems. It just didn't work. And we developed a separate trailer that housed the solar panels, and we would run with that a backup generator, an automatic backup generator, or you can get a manual one, but most people get the automatic. So we could solve two problems. The solar trailer itself can be parked away from the tiny house. So if you want to put the tiny house in a specific orientational view that suits a certain view that you're trying to achieve, or a shaded spot, whatever, you can do that, and then you can go put the solar trailer out in the sun, put that in a baking sun all day, and just run a power lead to the tiny house. So that solved a huge problem for us of having people wanting to have a shaded tiny house for the cool and having a built-in solar system. So that was the first thing. And the second thing is the generator. And now having the generator built into the solar trailer, essentially when the power goes down to about 20%, the generator automatically kicks in, charges it up to about 60%, which hopefully gets you through that period whenever you get to the next sun, and then away it goes again. Two things, the generator then is away from the tiny house, so you don't have the noise as much. It's away from the tiny house. It's on the solar trailer, which is, again, away from the tiny house, trying to get the most amount of sun. The trailer's in the sun and the generator's away. And that's what supports the lack of panels. So if you could have, 10, 20 panels on the roof of this tiny house, it'd be fantastic. Have a big battery bank and away you go. But the problem is you can only really fit about 4, maybe 8 if you're lucky, depending on the shape of the roof. But if it's a pitched roof, you're only going to get 4 panels. So if you can only get 4 panels, it is enough to recharge some lithium batteries, pretty good, but it depends, again, what you're using your house for. How much power you're using, which location is it in, is it running a heater or an air conditioner, that sort of thing. Yeah, our solar trailers are essentially a portable power plant. You just got to park it and place it in the north sun. That's it, put fuel in it.
And then also the other thing, because you're talking about the lack of roof space for panels on the roof, if you also have, say, a skylight, that's going to also take space too. So that'll maybe be one less panel, or maybe even room for 2 less panels. So there's a few different factors.
Huge amount of factors. Plus, you've got the ability to clean the panels. When they're on the roof, it's a lot harder. You got to get up there with a ladder and make sure they're clean. But if it's on the ground or on a trailer height, you can wash those panels so they're at maximum efficiency all the time. It's a much better, much more practical solution.
Yeah. And I know that you've got a few different options for the solar trailers. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about those?
Yeah, so we have a number of different solar trailer options. Mostly we divide it into 2. You either have a manual generator backup or an automatic generator backup. With a significant amount of our clients do the Airbnb, the last thing you want to do is have to explain to each tenant, monitor the batteries, and if it gets low, pull the chain and start the manual generator. You can't have that. No one's going to stay at your, you're going to get calls all the time from your tenants. I can't, I've run out of power. So we have the automatic one most people get, and definitely I highly recommend for the rental market. It monitors the battery in it anyway, and it'll turn itself on and off. You just got to keep fueling it and give it services. So there's 4 trailers. There's a 4-panel automatic or a 4-panel manual, or there's a 6-panel automatic and a 6-panel manual. Obviously, the more panels, the better. The less the generator will come on, and the faster the batteries will recharge. So if you're in a low light situation, you definitely want to consider the 6-panel one. If you're in a good sun position and you're going to use the tiny house maybe for like a weekender type setup. Typically got enough time between tenants that the trailer will recharge itself just with the 4-panel. If you want, and you're living at full time, 6-panel is good. It's a good choice. Just recharges faster, but it's really up to you and your budget. The 6-panel is better, but the 4-panel works just as great. You may use a little bit extra fuel than the 4-panel, but I wouldn't think much. I wouldn't think much at all. So yeah, they're the 4 main options. We can custom make them. People do ask for different components, larger inverters and things like that. Typically, that's very rare because over the years we know the system that works perfect for a tiny house. So we feel like we've paired the right amount of the right size components with the right size batteries. Some people say, why don't you just get bigger batteries? Well, the problem is you don't have enough panels to recharge them. So it has to be a balance. It's not like, just keep adding batteries. You have to have the sun time on the panels to actually give the charge back. So yeah, we pretty much have worked it out that what we can give on the back of a trailer is perfectly sized to that. If you want more solar, then you're probably best off building something on site, like have a fixed stand, and you could maybe make a bigger system on site if you know you're going to be there a long time. But if you know it's transport, the great thing about the solar trailer is it weighs less than 750 kilos. So typically speaking, most people's car can tow it. You don't have to worry about paying for a tow, assuming you got a tow ball, of course. Yeah, so it's an easy transport. The tiny house itself, I recommend using a professional tow company, but yeah, with the trailer, it's a very lightweight structure and most people can tow it themselves.
I know that you've got a maybe 20 or so minute video all about the solar trailer. So if people have maybe more questions, I'll put a link in the show notes so that they can go and watch that if they're interested. And I'd love if you're able to also share with us just a bit about the tiny house models that you build, like the sizes, the base price ranges. I know that you do customization too, but just the ones that people can buy off the shelf if they're not wanting to maybe wait on a waiting list, or they're just not really that fussed about customizing.
Yeah, so we run the workshop in 2 teams. We have a custom build team. So if you have every and any number of modifications you want, we can mostly cater for that. It just must remain classified as a caravan, because that's what we are legally. We're a caravan manufacturer. We're a motor dealer, a licensed motor dealer in New South Wales. People ask for wider or taller than the code. We can't make that. That's a nothing. I don't even know what that is. It's not a house. It's not a caravan. So it feels. I wouldn't ever make that or recommend it to anybody to build those. You fall outside the code and you're asking for trouble. So what we make a caravan. So if people want to make a modified design from what they've seen before or something like that, we can do that with one of our teams. We have an in-house designer, Danielle, and huge amount of carpenters that work on them. Or we do make now a bunch of tinies. They're models that we've seen over the years that we know are commonly asked for, commonly built. So we essentially just repeat those orders because we know that it's something that people want. Because one of the biggest issues I've had over the years is availability. Like, just can't make these things fast enough to keep up with demand. So we thought, well, we'll still focus on custom. We'll always do customs because it's important that you can make what you want to suit your individual lifestyle. But in a lot of cases, we were seeing repeated designs. And like, okay, well, let's just make those and we'll make them with a separate team that just is dedicated to making the same thing over and over. So we run those in series. So we'll make some at different times. And they start from, we have a small one, 4.8, that's perfect for Airbnb type accommodation. We also have a number of 7.2 metre models in the Lifestyle series. We have the Freedom series, which is 8.4. That's the biggest we can make. 8.4 metres long. It has ground floor bedroom, laundry and bathroom, kitchen, stairs, and 2 lofts, queen-size bed lofts. So it sleeps 6. It's the biggest one we make. We just scrape under 4.5 tonne, which is our maximum limit. So we can't really build bigger than 8.4 meters if it has a loft. We've since experimented and we have made a 9.6 meter, but we can only do that in single story. We can't do it in 2-story. It's too heavy. So, and other companies possibly may make bigger ones. I haven't seen really much bigger than 9.6. There's the odd one there, which I look at like intently. I look anytime I see a larger tiny house. I love to see all the pictures, especially of what's inside and the frame, because, well, I do question it, but I don't know how they can do it and have it structurally sound. That's my concern. So when I see a really big one, I think, oh, how did they make that so big and stay under the code? And a lot of the time, because we do speak within the industry with each other and talk with other builders, see how they're going, things like that. And we'll question each other. Oh, yeah, that's a nice one. How'd you do that one? Such and such. Some of the times I get the feedback that, oh, yeah, it was overweight. I was like, oh, okay. Well, what do you mean? So you do have to watch. And they said, oh, that's fine. I just finished it off on site. Oh, okay. Well, it is a possibility to do that, but it's harder, you know. So you gotta watch for us, because we make the caravans. We have to sit within the code of the caravan. We found that statistically we can't make a 9.6 for the 2-story. So, or we have to pull something out of it, which we won't. We won't compromise on making sure that the structure is good. So, yeah, they're the ones we have. And we do make one with we also have an annex, which is where we pretty much join two together. The caravan code allows for a caravan and an annex. The annex can be essentially the same size as the caravan itself. So they're more for permanent type situations. You can move it, and the system we make allows for that. But we don't make too many of those, but most people stick with the single one. But it is an option if you want a larger one, to double the size. As far as price point goes, you know, it's funny because I wish I could tell you the answers to that. And as a business owner, I probably should know those off by heart. Since I started the business, I started obviously by myself, and then I had the one carpenter, and we grew from there. We currently there's 40 full-time employees. It's nothing what I would have expected 5 or 6 years ago. What a great job that would be if I could make these environmentally sustainable homes, maybe 10 a year. That'd be a great job, you know. So we make 100 a year now, and we pretty much have to have a staff member for everything, and that includes sales. So I don't do that anymore. I used to, and I wish I knew the answer, but the team just keeps growing, and we'll keep growing it until we find that it's the right size for the market. But at the moment, the market just keeps wanting what we make, so we keep growing. Yeah, your best bet is going to our website. Hopefully we can put a link down the bottom there to the website, and all the prices are listed on our website. We've always found, I know that business coaches and model theories say, you know, don't put your price on the website, make them call you. Well, I've got nothing to hide. It's all on the website. We like to be upfront with everybody. It's just the cost what it is to produce these tinies with the staff that we have. You know, a question you raised earlier, which reminds me of this, is something, what have I seen change? Years ago, everyone used to spruik, oh, I could build a tiny house for $5,000 or, you know, this. And I'm thinking, you know, I'd watch those videos thinking, oh, how did he do that? You know, oh, he collected all the materials for free over a period of 2 years, and he worked for free. He didn't include his own labour costs. I'm like, well, hang on, you got to include your labour costs, because if you weren't making the tiny house, you'd be off on a job making money somewhere else, you know, or doing something. So they weren't really fair comparisons. It's not really fair. I think it gives some people a false sense of, well, they think, oh, you're just ripping them off. I'm like, well, I challenge anybody to start a company and produce the tinies for the same quality for less money. Go for it. I'll probably buy them off you. it's not that easy, it's not that easy at all. I think, oh, yeah, some people say, oh, look, you got 40 employees, you must be rich. You're kidding. I'm not the last person that gets paid. Like it's not what people think. I've noticed over the years, though, that those comments are there's far less comments about those unrealistic prices of people trying to make it tiny for nothing. They realize now, actually, you know what, that's cheap. What they're charging is a fair price when you compare it to what you would pay for a normal home builder out building a house out in suburbs. No way. It's so that's one thing I've noticed over the years. People are more educated now as to the reality of what it does cost. But yeah, all our prices are on our website, but you're looking at the average price is, say, most people spend around $100,000. That'd be the average. It goes probably more like 75 up to 150. I think the most expensive tiny we've ever made, and you got to remember we make custom-made tiny, so if you want it, like, I think it's just short of $300,000. I mean, we're talking like some really amazing tiny for that, but most people spend about $100,000. That's the target, really, I'd say. 100. Yeah, and now that we make the bigger ones, there's a lot more in them, so they're more like about 125 to 135. But yeah, the average custom tiny is probably well, it depends again on what size. The 4.8s I think are around the 75, and the bigger ones, the 8.4s and 9.6s, are about 135. So you'll be in that number somewhere, 75 to 135. That's what most people would spend. Yeah.
Yeah. And then speaking of the finances, so do you have clients typically they're able to get financing if they need it for your builds?
I only had a finance guy ring me last week, and he says, oh, yeah, I can offer you finance and a few clients, such and such. I'm like, oh, fantastic, We have a current finance company that does do it, and there's certain loan conditions and things like that. So we do have a finance company. Not many people do finance. There's two reasons for that, I think, and it is an interesting statistic for me because I've often wondered why that's the case over the years. One of it is actually the banks. So the banks, it's new to them. So anything new, they need to be convinced, like thoroughly convinced. So I think there's just because it's new, there's not the same like a normal home, like they do that every day of the year. It's different for them. So it's a bit more to find the right product that suits. And two, I find that the price point for the house, like because it's for your house, people allocate more money to their house, right? For their housing. Yeah, I reckon less than 5%, maybe, less than 5% would get finance. And I think that'll change because I know for a fact in the caravan industry, up to about 40% of people use finance to buy their actual caravan. But I would suggest less than 5% use it to buy a tiny house. So again, I think a lot of that's to do with it's a bit harder than it is. There's less options. So if you're going to go get a car loan, there's hundreds of companies that give you finance for car loan. There's just not the same that would offer that for a tiny house at this stage. Like I said, it is still a new industry. I've just found over the years, for whatever reason, for the clients that we've had, there's just not that many that use finance or only finance a small portion of it, So to top it up, they might have $100,000 themselves. They only need 25 if they've gone the bigger one, or they've got 75,000 themselves and they only get $25,000 loan, which we don't really hear about. They get it through either a line of credit or something like that. So typically the payments come direct from clients, not from banks. It's quite rare. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. And I'm wondering as well if someone is interested in one of your tiny homes, whether they want to purchase one off the shelf that's already there at the showroom or they're wanting to go through the custom tiny process. What does that look like for you? Like what can a customer expect?
Yeah, so say with our, there is two sections, that's right. So you can either, if you go to our website, you can either select one of the ones that we have, just it's pre-done, or you can choose from one of the models and custom design it. So with the custom design team, you can either come look at what's on our website or our Facebook page, Instagram, all that sort of thing, and get inspiration from that and everything else you see out in the world. And you can book a meeting with Danielle, our in-house designer, and you can work on essentially a design together and create that. And we produce a 3D model through our software that we use. So you can essentially get a bit of a 3D of what we're making, plus a full set of drawings. And yeah, that's something that's on offer for people. Or you come to the showroom or whatever's on our website on the sale page, you just see what you like and you just, hey, so that's for me, I'm ready, and here's my money, and off we book the delivery and away you go. One section takes a lot longer than the other. The custom team needs minimum of 90 days to sort that out. That's assuming you've finished your custom design. But for some people, it takes up to 2 years to get their design done. So a lot of people do sign a base contract and get their name on our waiting list. We have a bit of waiting list for our custom design team, and you sort of go from there. So, but yeah, some people take a couple of weeks to do their custom design. Some people take a couple of months, and like I said, the longest I know of is about 2 years for the custom design. That'd be probably the most amount of time. But yeah, you just come in, you design it, you work on it, you go away from it for a couple of weeks, you think about it, you come back with some adjustments, something else you've seen on Facebook or inspiration somewhere, or your life's changed, and I need this, I bought a puppy, I need to put a dog door in, all this sort of stuff happens, and then we make it to suit. If you need something now, straight away, you got the in-laws coming and you don't want them in your house, what am I going to do with these people? Just come to the showroom. There's, I think, 3 there at the moment, and you can choose one of those, or you can get on. You can just buy one of the models that we're about to build that are coming up in the other section where you say, oh, that's good enough for me. I'll take that. That's perfect for what I need. I'm not living in it full time. It's away we go. So it depends on your personality too. Whether if you're adamant that you want a certain color, certain finish, it has to blend with an existing piece of architecture. All those sort of things matter. An orientation of a certain view, you got to have a custom one. Or it happens to work out that the pre-made ones happen to work, then that's great. But for most people who have set parameters, they get on the custom board and work with Danielle, and we create a nice custom tiny for each one. But because it is custom, it takes a bit longer. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's the current lead time for custom designs at the moment?
Yeah, I think at the moment, if you wanted to get one, like a custom made one, I think there's maybe one spot left this year. That's a little bit confusing. I'll have to explain that. So because it takes 3 months to accumulate all your stuff, and the build itself takes about six to 6 weeks, right? 6 to 8 weeks, depending. That's a start date of there'd be one start date, I think, left in December. So that means you wouldn't get it, though, to probably February, something like that, So if that's for a custom one. But for the other team, like I said, there's 3 tinies for sale in the showroom, and there's probably the next one available on the list that's going to be built would be ready like in November, just short of Christmas time, I guess. Yeah. So it's a couple of months, not too long. Oh, there was a time when it was about 12 months. It was over 12 months. Yeah. And that's too long. I was like, that's too long. Like, we can't have that. No one wants to do that. And I used to, my brother tows tiny houses. He tows ours and other companies. He would say, oh, just drop one off, for such and such, another company. And he said, say thanks to your brother. I was like, oh, what for? He's like, well, because he's booked out so long, people didn't want to wait, so they came to me. I was like, oh, good. But that's part of the business. We grow to suit. So, we weren't making enough, clearly, so we rented more factory space this year. So we've got, I don't know how much factory space now. I think we have almost 2,000 square meters of factory space and 40 workers. So we're sort of trying to pair that waiting time down. So it's pretty good at the moment. It's less than 6 months, which is good. And that's probably a realistic target, I think, for anything you want custom. It always takes some time. The best case scenario is 3 months. So I think somewhere between 3 and 6 months is a probably average we'll try and target. If we're going beyond that, we'll hire more people. We just work with those parameters. It's not that easy to just hire more people, though. So if you're running a business or anything, you'll know there's two factors. There's obviously a low unemployment rate for starters. With a team of 40, they've got to blend in that they have to have a great personality that meets the existing team, and they have to be good quality. So you can't just hire anybody just for the sake of it. You've got to hire the best, or the best available anyway, and work with those people. So quality control is really important to us. It's not just a matter of slapping out some more tinies and just chasing money. It's far from it. The whole point of this business is to create a economically and environmentally sustainable alternative for housing to meet people's growing need. And I think that's what it will be long into the future. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I can see that with what you're doing. And just real quick there, you mentioned your brother Mark. Do you want to give him a quick shout out, say his tiny towing business company?
Yeah, so my brother Mark, he runs Tiny Towing. You can check him out on tinytowing.com.au. He does all our towing, so it is a separate business to us. He runs his own show, and he does deliver any tiny house, DIYs. He does a lot of DIY for people and other companies. He uses a Dodge Ram as his preferred method, so it's a 4x4. I do not recommend any other company. There are other ones that pick up from us. Clients can choose other companies, and there's nothing wrong with them. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with those, but I tell you, there's some sites that we have to go to which are very, very difficult, and you can't get there in a regular tow truck. It has to be 4x4. Often it's going through a creek crossing or up the side of a ridge. Very difficult. Some very difficult locations that we go to. So just be mindful when you do choose a tow company. Make sure you understand the full extent of where you're trying to ask the tow truck driver to go. So if it's a difficult spot, I would highly recommend my brother. His vehicle is well equipped with all sorts of 4x4 off-road attachments to get him into those harder to reach spots. So yeah, he does a great job. We've never had an incident on a delivery. I thought surely by now we would have had an accident, just with people with staring at it and not paying attention. But yeah, to date we haven't had an incident on a delivery, which is very good. Hopefully well into the future, let me tell you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen some of his videos online, some of the different conditions and the different terrain and the different, just the different situations that I've seen him get through, whether it's like a really narrow space or a really bumpy road or really steep incline. He's managed to make it through all of them, or weather conditions even. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, he's a fantastic driver. There's a certain personality type I think that could do that job, because it would be quite nerve-wracking. I mean, these tiny houses are built to the maximum capacity of 2.5 meters wide, 4.3 meters tall. So it's actually taller than most trucks, like the trucks that are going down the highway. He's actually taller than them, and you're towing it. It's a big load, and often he'll get to site. He has a special saw on a pole, because he'll prep owners, say, "Oh, have you prepared the driveways, the trees?" "Oh no, the trees are fine. They're fine." He gets there and he spends 3 hours cutting, trees down, branches down, so we don't scratch the tiny, just to make the last 100 meters. "Oh, I didn't realise it's so tall," they say at the end. Happens all the time. But he's equipped with all that now. He's gone as far north as Cairns, and he's in South Australia only a month or two ago. Tasmania, we're up to Tasmania. We're both going together. We've got a delivery together, taking two at the same time to Tasmania in late September. quite an interesting job taking Tiny's across the country. He loves it, and he would be more than willing to give you a quote. But just be mindful, if you've got a difficult site, often he's had to finish off a delivery for somebody else, like I said, typical tow truck, and he has to go the last couple hundred meters. That happens. But yeah, you're better off ringing him first, I'd suggest, and just double checking where you're trying to get that tiny house to. Yeah. Another awesome thing about tiny houses, because you can move it. It's just one of the, it's just so fantastic that you can have a piece of infrastructure like that. You've got your house, you're living there, your circumstances suit that area, and then you get a new job, or for whatever reason you want to move, you can just hitch it up and move it on, and it's just so fantastic compared to a regular house. The cost just to resell, just agent fees and all that sort of thing for the typical house compared to a tiny house. I mean, there's just so many things to love about this tiny houses. I love them.
Yeah, that flexibility is really great to be portable. And so you were talking about just there, he's shipping to different states around Australia. So you ship Australia wide, but do you also, I think you do some international ones now too, is that right?
We do have a partner in the UK. So that's, if you're in the UK or Ireland, you can certainly get one of our tiny houses over there now. It's only a new initiative. The travel restrictions have made it very difficult just to establish that. We have a workshop now in England, in Northampton. Yeah, so if you're listening on that part of the world and you want one of our tiny houses, they can be made there now. But yes, it is only a new thing we're working on. We obviously we'd love to be worldwide. We have tried in America already. We've built three. We've built two. We built two in America. We're on to our third one. Just working with the locals to establish somebody who builds it the way we want it built is a little bit more tricky than I first anticipated. I'll be honest, because we set a standard that we want here, and we have to replicate that everywhere. In the UK, we had no issues with that. Very high quality tradesmen and builders have had there. In America, we haven't had the same success as yet. We're only going to produce the best if we can. So we're still working on that, let's say. But yeah, we believe it's a solution for housing in around the world. Yeah, I think more and more people are going to move on it. And again, same in Australia. I think that in time I'm confident you'll see up to about 15% of people living in this type of house. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely more people looking towards this way of living. And as you mentioned earlier in the conversation, I think it's going to start to be a necessity for a lot of people. As we start to close out the conversation today, Grant, is there anything else you wanted to share with our listeners, or any exciting projects that you're working on that are coming up for you and Designer Eco Tiny Homes?
We're always working on something new. Don't worry about that. Because it is a new industry, we're always pushing to see what the limit is. I feel like we're almost there as to what it is. So I'm working with my fabricator on just one more little project. It's not little at all. It'll be the biggest one that we make. We're just trying to determine if we can come under weight. So this one is just going to be part of our selection series, where it's a pre-made. And it's very much tailoring for the rental market, this one, but it's going to include the biggest sort of indoor-outdoor area combo that we've done before. So we're pretty excited about that, and it'll be the perfect weekender or rental Airbnb, I think. Yeah, we're very, very excited about that. But there's a bit of work to go on it with the trailer, the base trailer itself. It's we're finding a little bit trying to overcome one little barrier. I've seen it before I've seen the trailer that I want before overseas. I'm just not sure that the Australian government allows this particular one. So, yeah, we'll see. If we can make it work, we will. But we're always looking for new things. We see it every week anyway with the diversity of what the clients bring us. Recently, we had a nice reverse loft made from one of our clients. That was their choice. and I'm pretty sure that'll now become part of our standard range as well, seeing a reverse loft. So a lounge room in the loft area and a short bedroom on the ground floor. So I'm pretty excited about that to be part of our standard range. They're the two main projects. A new, pretty swish Airbnb model and that reverse loft. I'd say that's probably what's coming up in the near future.
So watch this space. I did see a photo or some photos of that reverse loft, and it looked really cool. Like, what a great idea, especially if you want to have like the full size or the taller width of a lounge room on the top, and then like a kind of little cubby house of a bedroom underneath.
It just depends on. It does depend on your lifestyle, what you're trying to achieve. But I think if we notice more and more people choosing it, what I found over the years is what's on display at the time, you'll see that a lot of them in the next 6 months. So because of the time delay on what you get. So I think you'll find if you were to come to our workshop as showroom in 6 to 9 months' time, you'll probably see a number of the builds getting that reverse loft, because that's what's being shown at the moment on our Facebook, things like that. And people are now, it's in there thinking, oh, that does work for me. It's a very cool sort of layout. I quite like it. Everyone in the workshop really loved it. So I'm pretty sure you'll see a lot more of that. And again, we have, I definitely have some with the showroom. I'm so excited about the showroom. It's a new endeavor, of course, for us. It's about 5 minutes from our workshop itself. As far as we have some we're making some models just to have on display as teasers, as sort of like inspiration for people. They're obviously for sale as well, but we're running a few different custom models ourselves just to show people what you can do. And there's definitely there's going to be a very cool model coming up, something we haven't really done before, and that should be in the showroom probably February next year. That's a long time away, but time is pretty quick. But I'm pretty excited about that one as well. I call it the dollhouse. I'm going to call it the dollhouse. So dollhouse. I'm pretty excited about that. That is another one. We're always working on something here, I can tell you.
Never stops. No, that's exciting. I can't wait to. I'll have to come and check it out myself. I'm not that far away. Where is the best place that people can come and find and connect with you guys online, whether it's your website or social media?
So we're obviously active on Facebook and Instagram, Designer Eco Tiny Homes, and huge amounts of information and pictures and video links on our website, designerecotinyhomes.com.au. We have a YouTube channel as well, so you can check that out. These days, the best is once you've gone online, if you like what you see, make a trip to the showroom. It's amazing the difference between seeing one online and actually walking in one. And you made mention of it yourself when you're at the show, when you saw it at St. Ives. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to really grasp what it feels like from a picture. You're best off coming and seeing it for yourself.
Definitely. And then you've also got the solar trailers on display there too, which you can come and check out as well.
Everything's on display, pairing them up so you can see how they work.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I will put the link to everything in the show notes. And if you're looking for those show notes, you can find them at tinyhouseconversations.com. And Grant, thank you so much for being here on the show today. It's been a long time coming. I've wanted to talk to you for a while, and just really grateful to have your time and your energy today. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you guys at the showroom.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're listening to us at home, make sure you go check out what Grant and Designer Eco Tiny Homes are doing. And also stay tuned for some upcoming episodes, because I'm going to be talking about my own process working with Designer Eco. You'll get to see my own tiny home unfold and the build be complete in a little while. So that's very exciting. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today, to be here. Make sure you stay tuned every Thursday for new episodes of Tiny House Conversations, and I'll see you next week. Thanks again for listening. And if you enjoyed the conversation today, you found it valuable and you want to support the podcast, the best way you can do that is to share the love. That way I can keep bringing you more tiny house conversations to help you on your own tiny journey. So here are 3 ways that you can support the podcast. Number 1, if you have a friend or family member that you feel would benefit from hearing these conversations, feel free to share it with them, email them, text them, send them a telegram, do whatever you need to do to share it with them. Number 2, if you hit the subscribe button, you'll know exactly when the next episode is live. And number 3, if you head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to podcasts and leave a 5-star rating and review. Thank you so much in advance. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next episode.